Broadcasting live from California, get ready for an hour of pure, unapologetic conservative talk radio. Liberals beware, because this is the Wise Conservative Show.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Wise Conservative Show. It's been a few weeks since we've actually had an episode. I didn't plan to take a 2-week break, but last week technical difficulties came in right at the last minute, and it was really just horrible timing. But I apologize for that, but we are back getting into the swing of things in this new year. This is actually my first episode of 2017. I got a new intro for this new year, and I think this is going to be a great year, not only just government-wise, politics-wise. I think it's going to be a great year in general. So let's keep that optimism throughout this entire year. But actually getting straight into the whole, all of the issues that have been coming up, there's actually been a lot of stories that I wish I could have covered that happened in these past 2 weeks, but it's just so old of news that there's really no point in actually covering it at this point. But one thing that really is kind of right in the headlines right now, well, Representative John Lewis, he of course is one of the many Democratic representatives that are skipping the inauguration. And, well, the news is trying to make a big deal about this, and John Lewis is trying to make a big deal about this. They're all saying that this is John Lewis's first time boycotting an inauguration because Donald Trump is that racist. That's what they're trying to pull off here. But if we actually look at the facts, he actually also boycotted Bush back in early 2000s because, well, Bush was too racist. See, that's what John Lewis goes to every time a Republican wins. It's not him standing up for African American rights. It's not him being this civil rights statement that he always tries to say that he's making. It's not that. You see, this representative, he just always has to be in the headlines. That's what it is. He always has to be in the headlines. He is one of them that was proud about the Democratic sit-in on the House floor for gun control last year. He was one of them that was very outspoken about the entire event. He's very outspoken now about how Donald Trump isn't a legitimate president. He says that. He says that Donald Trump isn't a legitimate president. And let's be honest here, folks. Donald Trump is as legitimate as you can become. You are either elected or you're not. Donald Trump was elected. He is a legitimate president. I don't know how these Democrats continue. And we're 3 days away, or 2 days away at this point, actually, from the inauguration. How do they continue to keep up this battle that they're trying to wage on Donald Trump? And why are they doing this? You know what? Us Republicans, we are actually being inclusive. We're actually trying to, you know what? We've been in the Democrats' position. We understand. We understand that they are not going to get everything that they want, but we're willing to make compromises on some issues. We're willing to let some of them in and actually talk about issues. But when these Democrats don't get their 100% way, they throw baby fits. And that's what we've been seeing since November. It's now January 18th, and we're still having these elected officials throwing baby fits because Hillary Clinton didn't win. These are supposed to be role models, supposed to be our representatives, those who are intelligent. But instead, they're throwing baby fits and saying that Trump isn't legitimate or boycotting his inauguration in some sort of fake racist argument. You know, it doesn't matter what John Lewis did all the way back in the civil rights movement. Quite honestly, I don't know his record way back then. But I can tell you for a fact, right now, he is not helping anyone. He is not helping his constituents. He is not helping those that he claims to be in Congress for. And he is one of the prime reasons why we should have term limits in Congress. He has been there way too long. And he hasn't done anything. He hasn't actually had results for those of these claiming to help. For those of these claiming to help by boycotting Trump. All this proves is that he is anti-American. Because that's all it proves when you boycott an inauguration. Did we boycott the inauguration in 2008 when Obama won? No. Because we love this country and we pride ourselves in that peaceful transition that the Constitution has laid out and that we have followed for centuries. You see, to many countries, this transition does not exist. This peaceful transition is something of a miracle. But to our country, we must pride ourselves in that transition, pride ourselves in being peaceful about it, not making silly political arguments to try and delegitimize the president-elect. Because that is not the mature thing to do. That is not the American thing to do. And I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I believe there's around 50 Democratic representatives and senators that are boycotting the inauguration. Each and every one of those representatives and senators, those congressmen and women, each and every one of them are not actually in Washington for the right reasons. Because if you are going to boycott this transition to a new president because you didn't win, that's not being in Washington for the people. That's not being in Washington for our freedoms and our liberties. That's being in Washington for political power, for your own gain. And it's sad that the Democratic Party has so many congressmen that are willing to throw away this peaceful transition just to throw a baby fit. And there's quite a few of them, around 50. There's quite a few of these people that don't actually care about America or our peaceful transition that the Constitution has laid out. And this isn't just, Republicans, when we lose, we get all butthurt too. Yeah, we'd be upset. But we don't boycott inaugurations. We don't throw fits for months on end. 3 months now. We don't make up false claims about the president-elect and all of his nominees for his cabinet. But that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. That's exactly what the media is doing. This society that we're living in right now is being fueled by lies and by fake news that is coming out of the liberal machine. This liberal machine that cannot stop attacking Donald Trump, no matter what they do. Because they survived for over a year by just attacking Donald Trump. And now suddenly Donald Trump won, and they don't know what else to do. They don't know what else to do because they've been attacking him for so long, and that's how they've gotten to the point where they are. They've attacked him for so long that that's all they know. And so now that he is going to be president in 2 days, they still can't switch off those attacks. They still can't come together as Americans. Come together as those who are for a common goal, those who are working for a common goal. For our freedoms, for our liberties, for the better America that we all stand for. Because when it comes down to it, we should all have the same core ideals, which is freedoms, liberties, the pursuit of happiness, preserving our country and its citizens. That should be the core ideals behind both Democrats and Republicans. And Donald Trump did an amazing job at uniting both Democrats and Republicans, those who are the blue-collar Democrats, behind that message, behind those core values, bringing us together to work together, finally. Because after 8 years of Obama, we are more polarized in this nation than we have ever been before. We are so polarized that now you get these issues, such as John Lewis and his fellow Democrats boycotting inaugurations. And something's got to change, and we're trying, but they have to help out. Democrats have to help out in uniting this country once again, because half of the country working for it is not going to work. We have to compromise. We have to work together. We have to come together. And if that happens, we can prosper greatly in the future. But if it doesn't happen, our country is going to continue to go down this hostile path. Very hostile. And it's sad that it actually has even gotten to this point. But speaking of this horrible mess that President Obama has left over the past 8 years, it seems as if in these last few days of his presidency, he is determined to tear apart everything that this nation stands for and to leave a path of ruins behind him. He is now commuting the sentence of an FALN member, Oscar Lopez Rivera, who was a known terrorist, a convicted terrorist. He was responsible for many bombings, including quite a few in New York. He has been serving a 55-year federal prison sentence for being a leader of that Puerto Rican terrorist group, which was trying to fight for independence from the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico. That group claims responsibility for over 70 bombings in New York City, Washington, D.C., and Chicago from 1974 to 1983. The attacks killed 5 people and wounded dozens more, and even wounded some police officers. In 1981, Lopez Rivera, the man that Obama is now commuting his sentence, was convicted of seditious conspiracy to overthrow the U.S. government and arms trafficking. Then, after that, he was later sentenced to serve 15 more years behind bars because he tried to escape from prison twice. And throughout that entire time, he's been in prison since 1981. Throughout that entire time, he has never renounced his radical cause. In 1999, President Clinton commuted the sentences of 16 other FALN members. He even offered it to Lopez Rivera, but Lopez Rivera turned down the offer because he wanted all of his comrades to be released from prison first. And now, 18 years later from that, he will be walking out of federal prison a free man because President Obama cut his sentence short by 34 years. This is a known terrorist, a leader of a terrorist organization. And for some reason, President Obama feels that it is necessary for him to commute this man's sentence. By 34 years, this wasn't even a short commute. It wasn't just taking off 5 years or a couple years. No, this was taking off 34 years from this sentence. He has been in prison for a long time for a very good reason. He's a terrorist. He tried to fight the U.S. government, to overthrow the U.S. government. He had an arms trafficking ring going in and out of the U.S. and in and out of Puerto Rico. And he was in prison for a long time because of both of those things. But honestly, this is something that I will never understand, besides for one simple answer. But other than Obama not caring about America, there is no other reason why he would commute the sentence of this terrorist. Not one reason. There's no other reason why he would be rushing to get all of the other terrorists out of Gitmo before he leaves office and shutting that down. You see, over these past 8 years, President Obama has time after time done many things which seem as if he does not care about this nation. I'm hesitant to say that the President of the United States does not care about the country he is president of. But there is so much evidence to support that over these past 8 years. From his unconstitutional executive orders to commuting the sentence of terrorists, people who want to do Americans harm. He is dangerous. He can have access to weaponry, and he will be hailed in Puerto Rico by his fellow terrorists, by other people who have been taken out of prison from this terrorist organization. He is a dangerous man, dangerous to not only the citizens of Puerto Rico, but also the citizens of the United States. There's not one reason why Obama should have done this, not one reason if he was keeping our safety and our security in mind. But just as I said a little bit ago, he is doing everything in his power to completely disrupt this country before Trump takes office in 2 days. He's doing everything that he possibly can. And, him and the liberal media try to claim that he's just solidifying his legacy, because that's the word that they're using now for some reason. Obama's legacy, which is supposed to be a good thing. They're trying to say that this is going to solidify his great legacy. But in reality, the legacy that Obama is leaving behind is a worse America. Our GDP is growing at the slowest that it has since the 40s. Unemployment is skyrocketing. The amount of people who aren't even looking for jobs anymore has skyrocketed. The number of people on food stamps is upwards of 40 million. This is crazy. Our country is horrible. The race issues in America have increased. The tensions behind that has increased. Our police are now hated. There's a terrorist organization called Black Lives Matters running amok throughout our country. There is nothing good that came out of this presidency. His legacy is destruction and anti-American sentiment. That's what his legacy is. It's nothing good. Because honestly, I cannot think of one thing that he did that I will praise him for. If it weren't for the liberal media, he would already be labeled as the worst president in American history. Because honestly, if you think about it, just think about it for a second. And I'm sure you can ask your liberal friends this. Ask them to name one accomplishment that has actually worked, one policy that has actually worked, that Obama has pushed through during his past 8 years of presidency. Now, if they say Obamacare, we all know that has been an extreme failure. I mean, 116% premium increases in Arizona alone. It's been a huge failure. Then they could say that he's helped with undocumented immigrants. Well, tell that to the many Americans who have been murdered by those illegal immigrants, such as Kate Steinle in San Francisco. You see, nothing that he has done has been good for this country, or good for what our country should and ought to stand for. President Obama has been a failure, and I have more on what he's been doing right after this quick commercial break. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show.
And that, class, is why America is the worst country in the history of the world.
Are you sick of your professors telling you lies?
Now remember, children, if you're white, it means you're privileged. Don't ever forget that.
Do you sit through class convinced that your head is going to explode at any given moment? Sounds like you could use some backup. Visit youthrevolt.org for exclusive content produced by young conservatives for young conservatives. Youth Revolt features a dedicated team of radio hosts, political columnists, and video bloggers, all of whom are 100% committed to taking back the future of this country. So what are you waiting for? Tune out your Marxist professor and visit youthrevolt.org now.
8 years with Obama, and now no one knows what bathroom to use.
The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt.
Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday nights, for a conservative outlook on pop culture and American politics. Together we can reinstitute values back into our nation's young people and help create an alternative path away from the mainstream liberal agenda. Tune in to Millennials Rising, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday nights, only on Youth Revolt. The idea behind Youth Revolt is to let them, these liberal professors, let them know that we are here and we're ready to fight.
Youth Revolt. Speak without fear.
Hey, little boy, you want some free college?
Bernie Sanders, that creepy uncle your mom warned you about. The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Only on Youth Revolt.
Welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. Once again, I am your host, Connor Wise. Now, as promised, more stories coming out about President Obama. Well, now he is claiming fake news for another thing. Of course, he claims fake news for anything that the right-wing people throughout the entire country say is true. Well, now, just today, he came out and claimed that voter fraud is all fake news. Now, this is, of course, because Republicans across the nation are pushing for voter ID measures within states. Now, this was at his final news conference as president. He's finally done with news conferences. Well, in this final news conference, Obama said the claims of voter fraud have been, quote, disproved and are part of a, quote, ugly history of voter suppression. Now, here's a longer quotation from that actual answer. This whole notion of voting fraud, this is something that has constantly been disproved. This is fake news. Now, of course, this is the phrase that the left came out full swing to use against anything that the right wing came out with during the election. They use this as an excuse as to why Donald Trump actually won. They use it as an excuse for anything. If they can't actually present evidence as to why they don't believe in it, they just call it fake news. He went on to dispute, quote, the notion that there are a whole bunch of people who are going out there and are not eligible to vote and want to vote. Well, he said that we have the opposite problem. We have a whole bunch of people who are eligible to vote who don't vote. Now, that is true. We have a lot of people who are eligible to vote who don't vote. But what isn't true is saying that we don't have voter fraud in this country. There have been numerous amounts of cases of voter fraud throughout the country for the past few elections. Of course, the most recent ones, weeks before the election, a California man found dozens of ballots stacked outside his home. In October, a Virginia resident was charged with voter registration fraud for allegedly fabricating applications for new voters. These, of course, were both stories that the Washington Post reported. In 2013, an Ohio woman was given a 5-year prison sentence for voting twice in the 2012 election and 3 times in 2008, 2011, and 2012. So, no, we don't have voter fraud in this country, and this is just the people who are caught. This is nowhere close to all the voting fraud that goes on in this country. And not to mention, I wish I had the audio for you guys, but I'm sure you've heard of it. Right before the election, President Obama urged illegal immigrants to go out and vote because they're citizens too, is what he said. He told them to go out and vote because they have to have a say. But they're not citizens. President Obama himself urged for voter fraud to happen. And yet he comes out and says that this is fake news. This is another one of those right-wing conspiracies, just like Monica Lewinsky. You see, the left can't actually defend any of their claims, so they just throw out these catchy new phrases, such as fake news. Time after time after time, we have tried to protect voting rights by issuing ID measures. But of course, the left doesn't want that because then they won't get the reports of those who have already died voting Democrat. That's happened in Florida multiple times. Then they won't get illegal immigrants being able to vote for them. And here's an argument that I never will understand. They all say that voter ID measures are racist. They're saying that African Americans within our country have a harder time getting IDs because the forms are confusing and long. Well, first off, their argument of that is racist in and of itself. But let's actually take a look at the facts here. It's not that hard to get a state-issued ID in this country. It doesn't have to be a driver's license. It can be a passport. It can be a birth certificate. All of these are usable for voter IDs. And, if you actually go around, go, say, downtown Chicago, I guarantee you go and ask around if people have IDs, they will say yes. Because that is something that every normal person in this country carries. It doesn't matter whether you're white, black, or Hispanic. It's not an issue of race here, but rather an issue of trying to protect our right of voting in elections. Because the significance of your vote matters even less when we're letting these people, such as illegal immigrants, come in and vote. People who aren't citizens. People who, honestly, they can just walk in. It's sad that they continue to claim that there isn't any voter fraud and that it's racist or fake news when Republicans try to protect our voting. I'll never understand why they claim that. Because their argument of that is racist in itself. Fake news is just another buzzword that they came up with to try to represent it to everything. And yeah, you'll hear me use it a couple times, but that's because I'm making fun of the left. Because the true fake news is CNN and BuzzFeed releasing that unverified dossier about Trump. That was real fake news, not anything that Fox News comes out with. The real fake news was CNN releasing all those, the dossier as fact, as this proves that Donald Trump does this, this, and this, and he's been working for this, this, and this. When it wasn't even a true report. But no, people are going to believe that. People ought to believe that because CNN said it. CNN said this, so it has to be true. Because they don't lie ever. Folks, this is the same news agency that even on election night, after Donald Trump had won except for maybe one state to push him over, were saying that Hillary Clinton had a better chance at winning. CNN is so skewed, and I don't know if it got worse over this past year, or if they've always been this skewed. But right now, they are so skewed that you can't take them seriously. That they are the true fake news in this country. It's not Republicans and Fox News trying to report facts. It's not us just trying to implement voter ID laws throughout the country. Because that's not fake news. That's not racist. It's just a necessary policy that our country ought to adopt. But the left will always have these buzzwords that they use because, well, that's how they get through all the arguments. It's not from facts. It's not from statistics. It's from buzzwords. Well, more liberal America is coming up. Now, we see universities all the time going more and more liberal. And it's very serious at some of these schools. Well, now there's universities that are providing safe spaces to fight back what they're calling now, quote, toxic masculinity. Oregon State University is hosting a, quote, health masculinities conference. Students there will engage in collective imagining to construct new futures for masculinities, unrestricted by power, privilege, and oppression. At Brown University, they have a program titled Masculinity 101, and that's for students who identify as men. And the course description is titled Unlearning Toxic Masculinity. It says, quote, men will often resort to violence to resolve conflict because anger is the only emotion that they have been socialized to express. Unfortunately, the way that young men are conditioned to view sex and their need to be dominant and have power over others also contributes to instances of sexual assault and other forms of interpersonal violence on college campuses. So at these, I'm sure it's more than just Oregon State and at Brown University, but these are the two that's being reported. They have classes now. They're basically telling men to not be men. They're basically telling them to be those sissy men that you see, the hipsters, all of those people. The ones who don't stand up for anything, the ones who can't work for anything in their life. You know, if I thought my generation was already bad enough, now there's people trying to make the men in millennials be even less manly. This is just sad, and this is what modern feminism has become. This is what the progressive movement has become. this anti-man movement that thinks that if you're even a man, you're now you're going to be some monster. That's modern feminism. That's third wave feminism. I mean, they'll come at you with the definition of feminism, because that's what they always do. They always say, oh, but the definition of feminism is blah, 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 blah. But we all know that that's not what they truly stand for. We all know that they apparently stand for unlearning toxic masculinity, because it's now toxic to be a man. Now we need college courses to teach you how to use your masculinity properly. Can you please tell me how that relates to an education whatsoever? Why is that in a college campus? Why? There's no reason for this course. There's no reason for any university to have a safe space to fight toxic masculinity, to have a conference on health masculinities, to construct new futures for masculinities. And get this, unrestricted by power, privilege, and oppression. So they're saying that if you're a man, you already have, no matter what, you have power, you have privilege, and you oppress other people. That's what they're saying here. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that the homeless man down the street had power, privilege, and was oppressing people. I didn't realize that was a thing. I didn't realize just for being born a male, I suddenly get more in life. Because that's not what happens anymore. That is not how our society is at this point. And those who say, oh, everyone should be a feminist. It's for equal rights for all. Well, no, it's not. The true movement for equal rights of all is egalitarianism. And I am proud to be an egalitarian. So are all of our conservatives in this country, besides maybe a select few. Because we think that everyone should be equal. And that's how our country was started. That's how it is going to continue to operate. But we don't push back against a certain gender just because in the past, males did have more things. They could own property when women couldn't. They could vote when women couldn't. In the past, it was an issue. And in the past, feminism was necessary. I'm not saying it wasn't. But right now, in our present society, there is no reason for this toxic feminism. This violent feminism. There's some feminists who, if you're even a male, they'll just attack you. And there's videos of it. Just look it up. There's videos of that happening. But that's the modern day feminist. That's the modern day progressive within America. Those who are even farther left than Hillary Clinton. Those who are in the far left. Those who are like Bernie Sanders. That's the same group that he's in. Those who believe that socialism is the perfect way, that all men should be punished because they're privileged. That's the progressive movement, folks. And that is just scary. And that is just sad that now we have universities having courses on how men should be less manly. All right, coming up after the break, Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul talk to the Health and Human Services nominee. Don't go anywhere. This is the Wise Conservative Show.
Hi, everybody. This week, I want to make sure that you're aware of a group of young people that are out to reverse my fundamental transformation of America. This organization is called Youth Revolt. And before I go any further, I must urge folks not to visit youthrevolt.org. Now, Michelle and I, we're both gravely concerned that if this group succeeds, our children may not grow up to see the Marxist country that we will hopefully one day become. So I repeat, do not visit youthrevolt.org. And remember, I've got a pen and I've got a phone, and I will use them if I have to. And thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
I don't feel no ways tired. You know? Don't let anybody tell you that, it's corporations and businesses that create jobs.
Hillary Clinton, just another political clown. The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Youth Revolt.
And that, class, is why America is the worst country in the history of the world.
Are you sick of your professors telling you lies?
Now remember, children, if you're white, it means you're privileged. Don't ever forget that.
Do you sit through class convinced that your head is going to explode at any given moment? Sounds like you could use some backup. Visit youthrevolt.org for exclusive content produced by young conservatives for young conservatives. Youth Revolt features a dedicated team of radio hosts, political columnists, and video bloggers, all of whom are 100% committed to taking back the future of this country. So what are you waiting for? Tune out your Marxist professor and visit youthrevolt.org now.
Hey, little boy, you want some free college?
Bernie Sanders, that creepy uncle your mom warned you about. The Wise Conservative Show, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, only on Youth Revolt.
Hello and welcome back to the Wise Conservative Show. Once again, I'm your host, Connor Wise. Now, today there was a hearing for Representative Tom Price for the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And of course, Bernie Sanders, we all know and love him. He's very outspoken in his wants for socialist health care. That, of course, was a big part of his presidential campaign, and it almost led him to the nomination. Well, he had something to say that was really anti-American at the hearing today. Take a listen.
Be able to go to the doctor when they need to, be able to go into a hospital because they are Americans.
Yes, we're a compassionate society.
No, we are not a compassionate society. In terms of our relationship to poor and working people, our record is worse than virtually any other country on earth. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any other major country on earth, and half of our senior older workers have nothing set aside for retirement. So I don't think compared to other countries we are particularly compassionate. But my question is, in Canada, in other countries, all people have the right to get health care. Do you believe we should move in that direction?
If you want to talk about other countries' health care systems, there are consequences to the decisions that they've made, just as there are consequences to the decision that we've made. I believe, and I look forward to working with you to make certain that every single American has access to the highest quality care and coverage that is possible.
Has access to does not mean that they are guaranteed health care. I have access to buying a $10 million home. I don't have the money to do that.
And that's why we believe it's appropriate to put in place a system that gives every person the financial feasibility to be able to purchase the coverage that they want for themselves and for their family. Again, not what the government forces them to buy.
Yeah, but if they don't have any, well, it's a longer story. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So he's in there saying, oh, America is not compassionate. Well, listen to what Rand Paul, who's in the same committee, listen to what he had to say to Bernie Sanders.
One of the things that's extraordinary about our country is that just 2 years ago, in 2014, we gave away $400 billion privately, not the government, individually, to your churches and to charities. We're an incredibly compassionate society. And I think often this was misplaced in sort of the wonky numbers of this number and that number within healthcare. How much we do help each other. Not only do we help each other on our country, I'll bet you half the physicians in my community in Bowling Green have gone on international trips and done international charity work. And all that is lost in saying that we're this heartless, terrible country. And I would just argue the opposite. I think the greatness of our country and the greatness of the compassion of our country, we give away more than the gross domestic product of most of these socialized countries around the world. So I think it is important.
You see, this brings up an important issue and difference between Republicans and Democrats. You see, us Republicans, we know that America is compassionate, that we have so many people who give to charity, whether it's just for a tax break or whether they actually want to help a cause. We have so many people giving to charity within this nation, and Rand Paul pointed that out in his little speech right there. But on the left, they think that we're not compassionate because our government doesn't hand out free health care. See, that's a huge difference. We think that we're compassionate because of our citizens, but the left always focuses on what the government should overreach and do. And I think Representative Tom Price answered Bernie Sanders very well by saying that there are definitely issues with socialist nations' health care, as well there's issues with our current system, Obamacare. So I think he definitely answered that really well, and Bernie Sanders seemed a little pissed off about it. And he said, I love that. Tom Price said that we are going to make sure that everyone has access to good health care, as it should be. It's not a right, it's just a privilege. And then Bernie Sanders goes, oh, but that access to, that means that not everyone's going to get it for free. Or, whatever the quote. That's obviously not a direct quote. But you see, Bernie Sanders and much of the left thinks that the government should provide health care as a right. Which, that's not a right that's guaranteed in the Constitution, and it hasn't been a right in our history. I don't see why now we should switch to a system in which the government pays for something, because, quite honestly, the government does nothing efficiently. I don't think there's one program within the government that is very efficient. I mean, our debt is now up to $19.9 trillion. This is something that needs to be scaled back. Healthcare is something that needs to be scaled back, and that's what they're actually planning to do. Tom Price, he gave a few details about the upcoming healthcare system that we're going to be implementing, but he was definitely careful not to provide too many details, as Donald Trump hasn't come out with his official plan yet. But he did give us a little glimpse into what's going to really replace Obamacare. And of course, he said that our goal is to, quote, ensure everybody. That's always a goal for healthcare within this nation. It's not saying that we should provide it to everyone, but we should be able to. We have the capacity to ensure everybody. And he also suggested that the new GOP plan will largely give states the responsibility of covering Americans with healthcare instead of this massive blanket policy such as Obamacare. Price said, quote, insurance for everybody has always been my stated goal. That, of course, was during his confirmation hearing today. He also argued that more insurance accessibility along with financial help for consumers are keys to a better plan. Now, of course, he doesn't know all the details. Trump doesn't know all the details. Nobody knows all of the details on exactly what is going to replace Obamacare. We've had many Republicans actually write their own plans, such as Rand Paul, who you just heard a few moments ago. But many different Republicans have actually written their own plan. But right now it seems as if they're going to incrementally replace Obamacare instead of substituting it with a replacement right away. Before his committee, his hearing today, Price said this, quote, "I think it's fair to say they don't want to replace a Democratic health care plan with a Republican health care plan. Folks at the state level know their populations better, and that is exactly correct. A government, a central government, doesn't know what a small state such as Rhode Island needs compared to what California needs. It's way different here. The needs of each individual state must be decided at a lower level." I mean, that's how it should be constitutionally, first off, as this is not something that a power that is granted within the Constitution. So according to the 10th Amendment, it should fall to the states. But secondly, blanket policies just don't work, folks. Our country is too large and too diverse for a blanket policy to actually be implemented here. Maybe in a smaller nation, but we have a huge nation, a diverse nation. From the sprawling cities of California to the plains of Iowa. It's way different between these two states. So we cannot, and I am hoping that Trump and his administration will not, implement another blanket policy. But right now, the suggestions that it's going to be more local, that is definitely reassuring. And I have some great faith in Tom Price if he is actually confirmed as the Health and Human Services Secretary. But I was just looking at this over the break. I just saw this news story off of Fox News. Now there's going to be, at Georgetown University, they're now offering safe spaces with Legos, stuffed animals, juice boxes, and snacks. It's in an event called Self-Care Night, and it's sponsored by GU Pride, the school's LGBT organization. This is designed to help students who spend time protesting against the inauguration this weekend, and it's trying to help these protesters, quote, reconnect with their inner children and de-stress. Here's an actual quotation from an invitation that was sent out. Join GU Pride for a night of relaxation, recovery, and rest after a long week. There will be Legos and stuffed animals and coloring books. Come to embrace the inner child and hang out with people. So, Georgetown, of course, is in Washington, D.C. So now they're the Democrats, the college Democrats at that university, are now also asking students to make their apartments and dorm rooms available to those who might be visiting for protests. So, I mean, honestly, I've covered so many stories over the so stupid policies that these liberals have implemented within universities. I mean, I just covered one earlier this episode with demasculinization classes. And I thought that safe spaces were suddenly going to be gone. I thought there was going to be a change. But apparently these universities can't get it into their minds that this is not a good policy. And now they're going to be helping these protesters against Trump reconnect with their inner child. I don't think they're going to have a hard time reconnecting with their inner child because all of these people are behaving like children already. All of them are already being little babies over everything that is going on within this country. All of them are already being babies not only about Trump, but about university itself. All right, that's all for today's episode of the Wise Conservative Show. I'd like to thank you for tuning in. You can find me on Instagram at @the_wise_conservative. Facebook, just search up Youth Revolt. Find me on youthrevolt.org. I'd like to thank you once again for tuning in. Thank you, and as always, God bless.